What happened at Twitter? Why didn't Twitter stop working when Elon Musk fired two-thirds of the engineers? It's possibly not what you think. Hi, I'm Bruce. I've worked in FANG for many years. I know big tech, I know the quality space, and I know quite a bit about what's happened at Twitter, even though I have never worked there, though I know lots of people that have and did during this period. Let me give you a better idea than seemingly any tech journalist has about what's happened there. When Elon took over Twitter, he announced a bunch of firing of people he considered useless. He stirred up the whole extra hard mode nonsense, fired more people, did a bunch of illegal firings in various other countries and other things. A bunch of people hailed him as a business genius, and he probably didn't do nothing to changing how modern tech worked, because it turns out people love short-sighted, stupid approaches, which is what this was. And the most important part is, why didn't Twitter stop working? Why didn't it just blow up on the first day after it had done the things? Well, the reasons for that are interesting and have a lot to do with how a modern tech company actually works. Let me explain. So, at a modern tech company, you can't explain how things work if what you're used to doing is working in a discount auto parts retailer, like most tech journalists. In a shop like that, you have some people in the stores, they keep the warehouse stocked, they have people making orders to make sure the parts come in, you have people on the front selling those parts to people, and if any of those groups go away within a day or two, the whole thing will fall apart because there'll be no new parts coming in, no one can find the parts in the warehouse, and you can't sell the parts to people and it falls apart. Cool. But if you fire two-thirds of the people at Twitter, it doesn't stop. Why is that? What do the people at Twitter do? Well, in modern scale tech companies, there's a bunch of systems built over many years, quite complicated systems held together. They're built with a certain amount of redundancy because at scale, computers fail all the time. And so stuff failing is just automatically self-healed within that. Those systems have well-established release procedures. They can roll new versions out with automation, automatically have those versions, that release go across the many different servers they have. They don't have to take the site down to update it. All of that is built in. It's been developed years and years ago. There'll be a small group of more operations-focused people who are there to maybe run some of those processes, more or less intervene when they go wrong, but this is hundreds of people, not a large number. Most of the engineers aren't sitting there typing at their keyboards, making Twitter go. That's insane. No one does that. That's not how any of scale tech works. Instead, what they're doing is working on building the next features for Twitter. So when Elon fired thousands of engineers, what he broke was not Twitter's ability to serve things today. He broke Twitter's ability to effectively build something new and interesting a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now. And when he tried to launch Spaces, and it all went horribly sideways, when they tried to say, hey, let's get into the live video streaming thing, and it went horribly sideways, when the outages became harder to recover from and took longer to recover from because the changes needed to make the Twitter systems respond to those couldn't be done because no one was there to do them. Those were the consequences of him firing thousands of people. But Twitter engineering is actually a smaller part of what Twitter does, because Twitter also has sales and content health and so on. The content management people don't sit there reviewing every Twitter post, because that would be insane. This is scale tech. You can't do that. Instead, they're there for reviewing some fraction of flag posts, and they're there to constantly try and stay ahead of people doing spam, people doing Nazi, right-wing crazy stuff, people doing child sexual abuse, all of the terrible things that are reportedly now all over Twitter. I don't use the platform anymore because it's a Nazi bar. But those groups didn't hand check every post. They worked with an engineering team, also now fired, who to build filters to try and catch as much of this automatically as they can to try and stay one step ahead of what the spammers and other people were doing, so that overall the experience of using Twitter wasn't full of Nazi right-wing crazy stuff like we know it was, because Twitter's admitted it in court, though they did say that it was only because people hit refresh lots of times until the ad showed up next to the Nazi posts, and that's not fair. That's an insane take. I don't know who let a lawyer go into court and say that, but anyway. The other part is sales. And what salespeople do is they try desperately to convince people that it's worth having your ads on the platform. And when Elon came and basically blew things up and made it a Nazi bar, most sellers of anything other than dodgy herbal pills or illegal like weapons said, we don't want to advertise on Twitter anymore. Let's not do that. Right? And that's why their advertising revenue has fallen through the floor, and Elon's now propping it up. And those relationships are really important, but it's not just about selling stuff to people. It's also be about developing an engine that can kind of go, hey, you're talking about tropical fish. We should have an ad for tropical fish, or the Disney Nemo movie, or whatever the thing is that has some relationship to that, because random ads for random stuff have super low value. They're the old like 90s web of punch the monkey nonsense. They're garbage. They have really low value, and they're all you can sell on Twitter now, because that group that would actually try and find out someone's intent, if you're talking about buying, if you're on a thread on Twitter and you're arguing about what the fanciest watch is to buy, or something like that, it can be reasonably assumed that an ad for you to buy a watch of that kind, or a similar kind, or a company that sells discount watches or cheaper watches or provides excellent online service or something, that ad might be valuable to you. An ad selling nunchucks or like Nazi hats, perhaps less valuable to you at that particular time. In a different conversational thread, that might be a great ad. That whole advertising world is genuinely hard. You can't run that with no people. But that is exactly what Elon thinks he can do. He doesn't seem to understand anything about tech. He doesn't understand anything about what a company actually needs to survive. He has some sort of fantasy worldview of that. But that's fine. Elon can be silly, and no one cares, because we have come to expect that to him, because he consistently does this every single time. The more interesting question is, why can't tech journalists understand all these different roles in a company, and the sort of time frame over which them suddenly disappearing will cause things to go very, very bad, and what those very, very bad things will be? Because all of the predictions about how Twitter will no longer be able to release new stuff effectively, tick, right, will start to become overrun by really terrible content that makes it awful, tick, right? The idea that its relationship with advertisers would degrade to the point where Elon literally is trying to sue advertisers to force them to use his platform for advertising. Tick. Oh my God, what is this person on? Well, we know, right? Drugs, right? But all of that has come to pass. But the tech journalists are sitting there bleating about how all of these overpaid tech workers, who seemingly do things the tech journalists don't understand at all, are somehow surprised when these things happen. Like those tech workers, they don't do anything. It's super depressing, right? It's super depressing that the people who, in theory, cover what technology is doing don't understand what happens in it, don't understand anything that is done within that space. It's super depressing that one of the main ways you could be finding out about what's happening in the tech industry, tech journalism, is in fact a terrible way to, because those people just don't understand anything about tech, right? So, if you've been looking at the Twitter stuff or the reporting around it and using that to form in any way an opinion about what it means to have a tech career or what it means to work in tech, you should stop. You should find other things to listen to. I have many videos coming that will explain. I have many videos coming to explain what it means to work in tech, what tech jobs are actually like, how you can prepare for in your early career as being a student to be working in tech and be able to do interesting things. I have you on that, right? I can do that. So if you've been interested in what's happening in tech, what's happening in Twitter, follow along, leave a comment, ask what you're interested in, and I'll make videos from my own perspective on what this. Follow along, leave a comment, and I'll make videos covering all of those aspects of how to develop a tech career, how to develop yourself for a tech career, and what to expect in a tech career. Because I think tech is an awesome space to work. It is changing, it is going to be different, it always has, but it's still really, really interesting, and I'd recommend it as a career.